Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Thursday, August 5th, and it's an exciting day because CJ says he's got a lot of charts to share. We also had the Ethereum hard fork finally happen today. I feel like we've been waiting, what's it been, like 6-7 years for this thing to finally deploy. So today we got it. Seems like people are selling the news a bit. We'll talk about that and a lot more today. But CJ, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you for that intro, Monty. It is a very exciting day today with the London hard fork officially going live for Ethereum. And, these charts that I'm excited to share are not just around Bitcoin, but namely Ethereum and specifically exchange value and kind of total value locked. I'm going to get into more of like the supply and demand dynamics for Ethereum and both Bitcoin. But what do you want to start with today, my friend? Do you want to go straight into the charts or what are you thinking?
Yeah. I say we do it. I'm excited to see those metrics for the Ethereum hard fork and what you're going to talk about for Ethereum, because I think that's so critically important right now to kind of look at sort of the underlying what makes Ethereum tick, because this is a big transition. This is a huge, huge switch up for Ethereum. So we'll talk about all the metrics and what it means for it. So let's hop right into it, CJ.
All right, I'll share my screen here. And first of all, let's kind of establish what is really changing in the London hard fork. Namely, it is about gas fees and not necessarily lowering gas fees, but making them more consistent and more affordable. And so, in a brief summary here, this proposal will, replace Ethereum's auction-style fee market with an algorithm that automatically sets the gas price. So I'm sure that'll help many when Ethereum kind of trends very hard, or if it trends parabolically, gas fees will not have the problems, and presumably we won't be paying $250 worth of Ethereum in a transaction at the peak of mania. So that's really good. I think other than just the overall improvements, though, is the actual behavior of Ethereum holders and the influence that staking for ETH 2.0 and the eventual migration to proof of stake will be for the system. And so I think that the overall takeaway from Ethereum today and what we'll see from these charts is that there is a very shortage in supply of Ethereum, because we're getting a lot of this value that is end up being staking. We're having a consistent uptrend with individuals wanting to stake their Ether for Ethereum 2.0 despite price actually going down. And a very similar metric that is reflected is the balance on exchanges, because what's likely is that individuals are not staking their Ethereum 2.0 on exchanges. They're staking them in other variety of methods, or in cold storage or whatnot, or in pools. And so we see that same type of behavior reflected on the Ethereum balance on all exchanges. And so what does this mean necessarily for the price of Ethereum? Well, what I take from it is that it's going to take a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt to push Ethereum down with a supply characteristic like this. When we have a very low supply, if you believe in the stock to flow model, and if you base your investment thesis on Bitcoin, on scarcity and supply and demand, then that same premise is applying here to Ethereum, in the sense that we have a massive scarcity of Ethereum kind of on exchanges and being able to buy on spot prices. So if we do have a surge in demand, price is going to have to jump quite a bit to kind of fulfill those conditions.
Yeah, absolutely, CJ. That liquid supply shock is definitely one of the most important factors to consider when, trading around this Ethereum hard fork. But I want to get back to one thing that you talked about at the beginning and kind of the whole, premise around this Ethereum hard fork, and that is the attempt to make gas fees more universal, so that when, the network is super congested, it doesn't fluctuate to an extreme amount, because that right now is one of the, biggest flaws with Ethereum that we see is, even if you're building on top of it or trading on top of it, the most time you want to do that is when, the market's ripping. That's when we have the most people flocking to either build or trade. And it's just not exactly ideal to have the gas fees soaring when demand is the highest. So this, universal gas fee issue really should, incentivize development on top of the Ethereum blockchain. But not only that, it will lead to so much more stability during times of high volatility, which is going to be hugely important for Ethereum, not just making gains, but holding on to those gains as well.
Nice. Hopefully, I will be able to get out of any MetaMask positions. And the ETH gas fees don't skyrocket. I think we've all been in that situation before. But yeah, very interesting analysis of ETH. Of course, we had a little sell-off following the launch this morning, but actually, pretty nice run here in ETH over the last hour and a half. So pretty notable. Would you like to move to some Bitcoin comparisons now? Because I think the Bitcoin charts are pretty interesting, despite not having a whole lot happen over the course of the last 24 hours.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to just show this. Chris Vincenti pointed out, and you just said, the same thing as well. ETH having a nice little run over the last 90 minutes. It did look like people were starting to sell the news, CJ, but, the bulls stepped back in, bought it. Maybe they're starting to realize the true meaning of that supply shock that you were just talking about. And I think that, given what you were saying, and if the demand for ETH can just stay level, it doesn't even need to increase. If it can stay level, price will increase because of that supply shock. And I think we're starting to see that already into the price action today. So I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing from ETH following this Ethereum hard fork here.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, let's take a look at BTC. And we've been talking about Wyckoff accumulation and whatnot, and trying to understand the market from the perspective of large market participants. And, you look for these structures and kind of historical examples of where we've seen accumulation levels like this. And there's an interesting one that I saw relative to like the SPY and what we saw in 2009. And so we have Bitcoin on the bottom here, and we have the SPY on top here. And this was in a period from roughly like the depression in 2008 and 2009 all the way up until the recovery and subsequent bull market throughout 2011. Also, I do want to just highlight this pattern to kind of understand the structure of when we get this spring. Monty and I have talked about this a lot, but then once you get kind of that last back test and that last sign of support, we typically see a spring from these levels after this accumulation phase has occurred. And that's like very, very close to what we saw with the SPY in 2009, right? We had our last test of support and our last opportunity for kind of large institutional players to accumulate at these levels. And, the volume profile really plays into that as well and allows us to be able to locate those areas of mass capitulation and accumulation. So, what does this mean for the Bitcoin trend? Well, I think it means that we have to be flexible in our thinking. Cole Moshe, he's got an interview in the book Hedge Fund Market Wizards. And he was at Citigroup for a long time. He never had a losing year. Then he went and managed money for George Soros. And he reflected in this book back on his time managing money in 2009 and saying, I was very fundamentally bearish in 2009. But right at this particular point, when price action started to shift, I still didn't believe we were in a recovery, but I had to shift my position thinking because price action was dictating, the momentum of the market at that particular trend. So, maybe I am feeling that way about Bitcoin, or maybe I'm feeling that, we haven't quite bottomed. That doesn't really matter. What matters is the price action and what we're seeing and how it kind of follows out of this level subsequently. So I am bullish, and I do think we will likely see some price action like this in the following weeks, potentially if we can remain above that fib level. But overall, if we followed this type of trend and slow grind upward, we'd end up around 60K to 56K anywhere by November. And you may be thinking that's not 100K by the end of the year, or that's not stock to flow. But when we went from 20K to 40K, there was a period of time where we did very recently in Bitcoin 115% increase in 27 days. So even if we lead up to that 50 to 60K level, we could still do another 100% in like only a month and finish over 100K by the end of the year. So The mathematics do kind of play out, but that's just kind of an interesting correlation that I wanted to bring to light.
Very interesting, CJ. And you mentioned the stock to flow model in there, and one thing that we always like to do, you can't just look at really one metric or one indicator. We like to look for confluence between indicators. And last night, I had a soccer game very late. It was at 10:45 p.m. So I got home, and right when I got home, I got an email from one of my alert services that I use looking to Bitcoin, and it was referencing the stock to flow model, CJ, and it said essentially that we are very far diverged from the stock to flow model. And, given what we've seen historically with this sort of divergence, we typically get very accelerated price action in the subsequent few weeks. So I forward that on to you. Any thoughts on that? I know you mentioned the stock to flow model and kind of use that as part of your projection.
It's funny because I subscribe to that same service, look into Bitcoin. Not a whole lot of alerts, but when they come every month or so, every 2 or 3 months, it's pretty exciting. But yeah, I was looking to pull up this chart as well, but I mean, it's basically just a massive divergence from what we should be relative to stock to flow model and that perceived value based on kind of the increasing scarcity left over from the previous block halving in May of 2020. So, one of our members in chat said it over the weekend. My favorite part of the cycle is the orange to green part of the cycle. And, we are experiencing that in these next 3 to 4 months, kind of as the year wraps up. So it'll be very interesting to see if that model continues to be accurate like it has been throughout the past, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that typically if we apply the stock to flow model to not just Bitcoin, but what it means to the altcoins as well, if we see that sort of accelerated move back up to the stock to flow moving average for Bitcoin, I think that will result in some tremendously bullish price action for the alts. We talked about a few this week. You've talked about a lot that are looking, primed for that takeoff. They got the Williams alligators turning up. They're getting above their moving averages and critical levels. Any in particular today that you're looking at as some potential doges of the day?
The episode on Monday where it was that massive list of assets that were 8 to 10 assets with decent volume above the Williams alligator moving averages, that was what I was looking for. One thing that I noticed this morning, and I do want to see a little bit more bullish price action. I want to see a little bit more excitement around Bitcoin before I get in a short-term altcoin play. But I still like accumulating alts for this at these price levels for a potential second leg up in the cycle. This is not a fundamental play by any means, but one thing that caught my eye this morning was that the volume profile on GLM Golem was pretty off the charts. Like, it's been seeing some unusual spikes in volume throughout these last 2 or 3 weeks. So maybe keep an eye on that one and add it to the watch list. I'm not a long-term investor in that project by any means, but I think there might be something interesting going on there in the short term with these spikes in volume. So we'll see.
Interesting. Yeah, I too have been looking at volume. That's kind of been the basis for a lot of my doges of the day over the past week or so, CJ. And one that I want to talk about today is Mana, because I noticed it yesterday while we were doing Trade the Chain, but the relative trading volume on this thing is just, it was in the top 5 for the crypto assets yesterday. And what I think is most notable here with Mana is just sort of this shift we've seen in the amount of trading volume since we started the month of July. Coming into July during this whole downturn here, we had such lackluster volume. This thing couldn't have moved up, like, even if it had a tremendously bullish news-related event, just because there was so little volume. Not until we started July, right after the 4th of July, we started to get a lot of speculation in NFTs, and that saw the underlying asset of Mana perform very well. But as you can see, even though we had this uptick in volume, it's kind of been a mixed bag of volume. We've had bullish volume and bearish volume in these last 3-week periods, and it's kind of resulted in a sort of compression around this price. But what's most worth noting, in my opinion, is the fact that the volume has held up above these levels. We're still seeing very strong volume. Even today, the volume is looking very good, but price is kind of just hanging out at these levels, kind of compressing between the 200 simple moving average and the 20-period smooth moving average. But I think that given the volume profile and given the speculation in the NFT space and what we've seen from Mana historically, this thing does look primed to run if it can just break above the simple moving average. So that is my Doge of the day today, CJ, Mana.
Thanks for pointing out that volume. That is very interesting, and it suggests kind of accumulation by some larger players. That's always kind of what I imply or infer when you kind of see things like that on charts. So that's what I'm going to be thinking of. Yeah, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That really means a lot to us. And Bill Parker, Comp or Luna, thoughts or one? Monty, I know you've been talking a lot about Comp. That's been your Doge of the day. That's turned out to be a very successful trade in the last week. Would you like to kind of dive into that one, and then maybe I'll take Luna?
Yeah, absolutely, CJ. So yeah, like you said, I've been liking Comp for a lot of the same reasons I just mentioned. With Mana, the volume profile for Comp, I think, has been very impressive over the last month and a half or so since we started July. A lot better than a lot of other assets during this same time period. Now, and that's why I picked Comp as my Doge of the day, right? For a lot of the same reasons I just mentioned with Mana. As you can see, this has kind of already made that move. It broke above the simple moving average and now is kind of turning up and heading towards this next critical level here of about $519. We saw a price top here, in the middle of July when we got that incredible amount of volume and, 9 consecutive days of some pretty positive price action here. I think we're set to retest this level given what we're seeing, a price above the moving average, volume looking strong already today. So if we can, eclipse the volume from yesterday, which is looking set to do, I like our chances of, perhaps retesting this level of 520. If you did get in, when I talked about it on Monday back around here, this would not be a bad level to take some profits, because what we've seen with assets that have very similar technical formations here is we see them break above their simple moving average, head up to retest critical levels, and then come back down and retest the simple moving average as support. So I think that that's something we could see here over the next 24 hours with Comp. But regardless, the volume profile overall is what encouraged me to enter this trade in the first place. And I'm still very much encouraged by what we're seeing right now here, CJ.
Thanks for that. I will take Luna now. And this one has just been like a dark horse, really. Maybe not. Maybe I just overlooked it. But I mean, the Luna, or the Terra Alliance, rather, a lot of major players in that organization backing Luna with a vested interest. And so I'm very fundamentally bullish on Luna for that reason. Being said, now we are coming up against critical resistance almost near the highs of the last cycle, or at least when the first major capitulation event occurred. But you're talking about volume on Mana. I mean, look at the volume on Luna. That is incredible. Just continuing to increase as we approach these pretty strong resistance levels. So, I would not be surprised to see, a short rejection from this level potentially find support. I'm also curious as to where the fib levels line up. Let's see. Yeah. So it's getting rejected right at the 618 level. That's pretty interesting. I would look for support on Luna if Bitcoin and ETH don't continue to turn up. If we get a little bit more of a sell-off and maybe a down test, I would definitely be looking at these critical levels for a bounce from support. It is kind of tough that we're running into that 618 fib level. But when you look at volume and when you look at momentum oscillators like the MACD and the RSI, we're still seeing convergence. We haven't seen any weakness or slowdown in momentum thus far. That being said, what does go up in a short term very quickly does come down. I don't know. I would just keep a stern eye on these levels for the near future.
Thank you for that, CJ. And one last thing I want to address. We have a question here about a price target for Mana, my Doge of the day. So I'll be quick. I want to just extrapolate what we were talking about with Comp there and how we saw it make, a bit of a lower high and then retest that level once it broke above the simple moving average. Conservatively, that's what I'd like to see from Mana here. A break above the simple moving average, come up and retest where we wicked up to here, which is about 0.85. That's something I think we could hit within the next 2 days. A more, far out target would be the psychologically critical level of $1, I think we'll hit some staunch resistance there based on what we saw earlier in the year. And to break above that level, we're going to need even more volume than what we're already seeing. So my current interim price target is about 0.85 for the next 48 hours.
Don't you love price targets? I do. Just want to say thank you to Voyager for sponsoring this program, of course. Don't forget that you can get interest and trade commission free on their platform. When you sign up and use the promo code REBEL25, you will get $25 free in Bitcoin with the first $100 that you fund the account with. And don't forget, you can stake USDC and earn up to 10% APY and 12% on DOT. And so definitely check that out if you're looking for a new crypto broker or potentially just hodling throughout this cycle. It's a great way to compound your earnings in a bull market. And also, if you'd like to learn more about technical analysis and trading crypto, we offer a crypto trading room at the link below that you can try the first month for just $1. Monty and I are in there basically 24/7 other than the wee hours of the night. And we're very happy to provide education, lots of charts, and answer questions for you guys. There's also a myriad of very talented traders in that room. And, they're always posting interesting stuff that I learn a ton from as well. So that's all I have to say for today. But thank you, everyone, for watching. And I'll pass it back to you, Monty.
Yes, thank you very much, CJ. Don't forget to check all that out. We got a lot of interesting stuff in the works over at the Crypto Room. And one last thing I'll address. We got one last comment here. Any change on DOT thoughts? Nope. Still bullish on DOT. Still holding my position for my Doge of the day. Published a trade insight on that yesterday. You can check that out if you're a member of the room. I got price targets in there, entries, exit, stop losses. So definitely do check that out if you have not already. But thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you again tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.